Hi, I'm Debbie Ingram, and we're going on our virtual tour of Vermont to Orange County this week. Glad to have you join us. When we look at Orange County by the numbers, we see that the population is almost 29,000. The non-white percentage is the lowest of any of our counties, so it is the least diverse at 3.2%. The poverty level is slightly below that of the rest of the state at 10.2%. And the median family income is actually very close to that of the state as a whole. It's a little over $56,000. And the median home price is $179,500. The median gross rent is $847 a month. So it's actually somewhat more affordable than many of our counties. The number of farms is 569, and that is actually a pretty substantial number. In our history segment this week, we're highlighting Justin Smith Morrill, whose homestead is in Strafford, Vermont, in Orange County. He served in the U.S. Congress on behalf of Vermont for many years. He was 12 years in the U.S. House of Representatives and 31 years in the U.S. Senate. He first entered politics in 1854 as a member of the Whig Party and then later became a founding member of the Republican Party. And he served on the Joint Committee on Reconstruction and was instrumental in drafting the 14th Amendment, which provided equal protection to freed slaves in the aftermath of the Civil War. And also, as chairman of the Committee on Public Buildings and Grounds, he was very important in building the current Library of Congress. Now, two other pieces of legislation were very important that he was associated with: the Morrill Land Grant Acts of 1862, which provided grants of land to states to develop colleges that specialized in agriculture and the mechanic arts. And then he was instrumental in passing the Act of 1890, which required each state to show that race was not an admissions criterion, or else to designate a separate land grant institution for persons of color. And so out of that came 17 of today's historically Black colleges and universities. Today I am with Lynn Bujnak, who is the conference minister of the Vermont Conference of the United Church of Christ. And thank you very much, Lynn, for talking to me today. Yeah. So please tell us a little bit. A lot of folks know that I'm an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, but they probably don't really know, what is the United Church of Christ and how are all these denominations different? So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, first of all.
Sure, I'd be glad to. The United Church of Christ is often a name that's not well recognized in Vermont and in the Northeast states, because most of our churches continue to call themselves congregational church. So, but most of the congregational churches in Vermont are part of the United Church of Christ, but certainly not all. So this is a denomination that was born back in 1958 of four predecessor denominations, and really came of age in the 60s, which means that this is a denomination that actually has a long history and bent towards social justice. And that's one of the ways in which that's a distinctive, I guess, mark of the UCC is the understanding that our faith causes us to be involved in issues of justice. Key values for the United Church of Christ include I think our vision statement right now is united in Christ's love, a just world for all. So there you see that justice coming out again. The other two things that I think the denomination is really known for is a sense of radical welcome and hospitality. There's a phrase that gets used in many of our churches that's no matter who you are or where you are on your journey, you're welcome here. And so that's a very important value for us. And I think another one that's very important to us is this idea that God is still speaking, that there's, it's not that we got through the book of Revelations and that was it, but that God is still active and alive and still talking to us as we seek to respond with our lives. So that's the UCC in a nutshell.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that's, what you've touched on, drew me to the UCC, the idea about social justice, the emphasis on social justice, but also especially the radical hospitality, the inclusion. I mean, part of my story is that I was originally ordained in the Presbyterian Church, and then they actually have prohibitions against the full participation of LGBTQ people. And so, when I finally was able to really embrace, who I am and come out of the closet, I no longer had, I was no longer welcome really in the Presbyterian Church. But coming to, not only to Vermont, did I find refuge as a state, but at the United Church of Christ has been, a haven for me, and it has been so wonderful to be welcomed and to be accepted for who I am and to have my gifts appreciated. So it means so much to me.
And it means a lot to us as well. So we have a tendency to pick up some incredibly fine ministers because another denomination is not able to or does not accept fully who you are. So.
Probably folks have heard across the country about some churches trying to meet in person, but I think it's true that most of our congregations here in the UCC in Vermont switched to kind of remote worship and haven't gone back. Is that right?
Yeah, the vast majority of our churches are doing that, and I think the most common thing that we hear folks say is there are many people in our churches who really fall right into the category of most at risk. And so, sort of the loving thing to do at this point is not to risk their health and their lives until it's safe for all of us to be able to go back to worship. So and we have a couple of churches, maybe a handful of churches that are doing some outdoor, socially distanced worship in the summer when it's possible for that to happen.
Yes. So thank you very much for talking with me, and I'm sure I will see you again at some point. So take care.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Our fun thing to do this week is the Tunbridge World Fair. Fairs are a very big part of Vermont culture, and this one is one of our best known. It's operated for 148 years and generally spans 3 days in mid-September. Of course, it will not be operating this year because of COVID-19. But it first began in 1867 with a horse racing track, and it's grown into a big event today with all kinds of agricultural exhibits, dog agility tests, prize-winning dairy cows, contests for food and crafts, music, dancing, rides, and famed peanut pumpkins. So it is a truly big Vermont event. It's operated by a board of 100 shareholders, and that started back in 1901 that those shares were first sold. So they passed through the hands of generations of families. And as I said, the fair won't take place because of COVID this year, and it's the third time in its history that it has been canceled. The past two times were for the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic and also during World War II. I'm Debbie Ingram. I'm running for Lieutenant Governor, and thank you for joining us this week for our virtual tour. Remember, you can start voting now. You should have received a postcard from the Secretary of State to request a mail-in ballot. Record number of Vermonters are asking for those ballots. Please fill it out and vote for me, Debbie Ingram, for Lieutenant Governor. Thank you.